So this is our boiler system. This is what we get going first thing in the day. This just creates the steam to heat our jackets and our hot liquor tank and our kettle for later in the day. So this will build up on pressure, and then we'll flip on the hot liquor tank and start heating that up. We need to get that guy to about 170 degrees before we can start graining in. I've been with Royal Bliss for about 3.5 years. I came in as a rookie. I didn't know really anything about the whole process, and Chris has taught me from the ground up. So what we need to do now is we need to make a grain palette of all the grain we're gonna get thrown today. So let's go get that made. This is just our back warehouse. This is where we keep a lot of our dry goods, our grains, our kegs, and any of the other just stuff that the tap room needs. Right now, we're just getting the grain palette made. So most of our grain comes from Carolina Malt House. That's a local granary about an hour north from here. Most of everything we use is locally sourced, grain-wise. So yeah, this is where we keep our malted grains and barleys. The malting process is about getting the grain wet, letting it germinate or sprout, and then kilning that malt at a certain temperature to get your desired roast or flavor that you want from that grain. The grain is where you're getting your sugar for the yeast to consume and turn into alcohol later. Our boiler is up under pressure now, so I'm gonna come over here and start getting our hot liquor tank heated up so we have that good to go later. So this is our mill room. Essentially what this is 2 grinders or gears in here that are rolling in on each other. But you want that at the right distance apart so where it cracks your grain to where you still have enough husk or hole to create a strong grain bed, but you also want to break apart the inside so you can extract the sugars and the starch that you want from the inside of the grain. Very precise distance that you want your grist to be. What's happening now is that milled grain is going up through our auger and transporting all of our grain, then goes up into our silo, which is meant to hold about 1,000 pounds of grain. So right now he's getting that tank CIP'd, which is clean in place. Once we get our water to temp and all of our grain thrown, we'll start graining into our mash tun. So this is our mash tun. As you can see, it has a false bottom. That's so a lot of the grain can kind of sit on the top while we'll pull the wort from underneath it. So got the rate going. We're gonna open up our water. Now we're starting our grain in. So all that grain that we threw up here in our silo, funneling through here, and here it's getting hit with hot water at the temperature we want it to. And then so it's going in wet into the mash. If it comes in dry, it'll clump up and won't create an even mash bed like you want it to. About half of the total water used in brewing will be in this process. At this point, what we're doing is just transferring those starches within the grain into a fermentable sugar. That happens with just the grain soaking at the appropriate temperature, that 148 to 156 range. And most of that conversion is going to happen in the first 15 minutes, but you normally let it go for an hour. Just let that grain bed compact and to get as much sugar as you can. So now, I just have this set up. So this will sit for an hour. So we want that grain bed compact, but still permeable. And then open the valves up and we'll be recirculating the wort on top of the grain bed, recycling it for about 30 minutes. All right, so we're done with our Vorloff. We've created our grain bed. This is cleared up enough now to where we like how it looks. So we're going to start our sparge and lauter, which is starting to transfer the wort into the kettle while also splashing the hot water on top of that grain bed to just continually extract all of the sugar from that. This is just transferring all that wort and sugar water into the kettle to be boiled. Trying to get as much of the sugar water as you can while getting the least amount of grain material. So we're about in the middle of our lauter. I'm transferring over the wort, getting it heated up to boil temperatures. I'm watching at this just to make sure that we're not pulling in stuff that we don't want right now. And then I'll know that this is empty when the level starts to come down. Our spent grain is picked up by a local farmer that will come and take that and just feed their cattle. It's a really good farm food, has a lot of good proteins in there. So even though we're done with it, it gets used feeding the farm. So as you can see, we've just approached boil. We'll do this for the next hour. This is where we'll throw in our hops. So we're almost done with our boil. Now we're gonna add our hop addition with our whirlfloc and yeast nutrients. So what I just did, killed the steam, go into the boil. So boil's done, and now we're recirculating the wort. So it's being pulled from here, going through the pump, and then flowing back in the tank there to create a whirlpool. And with that whirlpool, we're hoping to get all the proteins and other vegetable matter to form a troop cone into the bottom. We just got done with our boil. Now we're gonna pump everything from the kettle through these pipes, through our heat exchanger. So this is the heat exchanger. It pretty much turns our 205, 208 degree wort into 55, 80, 90 degree, whatever, depending on what your knockout temperature is set to. We'll be running the wort in through this side of the heat exchanger. It'll be coming out here. Cold water will be going in, hot water will be coming out. So we'll go from wort, it's gonna go in through this tube, and it'll be pumped into F3. So we've just started knockout, that's transferring the wort we've just boiled into our fermenter tank over here. So we're coming through a heat exchanger, coming out at around 70 degrees into the tank. While we're doing that, we're aerating the wort with oxygen. So we're giving it oxygen while knocking it out into the tank. The yeast needs the oxygen to propagate. We're just taking a sample to get our gravity or see how much sugar we have extracted into our wort. But this is what we've worked so hard to make today, sugar water. So now we're getting our original gravity reading to see how successful we were at converting the starches into fermentable sugars. This will give us our original gravity or our Plato reading. This is a saccharometer, and we use this to play off what this says and the temperature, and it'll give us a reading kind of like a mercury thermostat would. 10.1 plus 2. So that gives us a Plato reading of 10.3, which is good for this beer. We had solid extraction. Like our hazy IPA, something that you want with a high alcohol percentage, that's gonna have a much higher original gravity because this is reading the amount of sugar that you have in there. So higher gravity, higher Plato means more sugar which means more food for the yeast to turn into alcohol. So more sugar, more alcohol. So now we're done knocking out. Every bit of work that we are gonna get from today is in the tank. The yeast is starting to propagate. It'll be a while before it starts off-gassing, but everything in there should be set. Depending on the style, it'd be 3 to 8 days till this is fermented out. I would guess for this beer, it'll ferment out in 5 or 6 days, and then we'll let it condition, and we'll transfer it over to a bright tank with peaches, and then it'll become our fruited wheat peach body, straight from the source. So that's the end of our brew day here at Royal Bliss. Hope you learned something, and stop by the tap room whenever you get a chance. Cheers.